Good morning. This is Cherokee Charles, the Cherokee that can see. And this, again, is Cheeky Mo. Now, I got to sit back for a moment because I finally understand something that I didn't understand my entire life. And you know what that is? I understand now why I'm poor. I'm poor. I'm one of the poorest people on the internet. And so are you. Now today, I'm going to talk about why you're poor. And it's simple. It's very simple. Stay with me to the end and I'm going to tell you why you're poor. But for now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about wealth. We're going to talk about not being poor. And we're going to take a little ride down history, and we're going to talk about the history of wealth in America. So let's go back in time to the end of the Second World War, around 1945. Okay? Now, between 1945 and about 1970, there was substantial growth in wealth in this country. The wealth growth in this country increased for the most part steadily. And income itself grew pretty rapidly at about the same rate, regardless of where you were on the, income ladder. Whether you were considered poor or middle class or upper middle class or rich, it pretty much grew about the same. And the gap between the rich and the middle class, even though it was substantial, it didn't really change that much. Then comes 1970. And we had, guess what? Inflation. We had an economic growth slowdown. And the gap between the rich and the middle class and poor started to get wide, started to widen. Why do you think that is? Hold on. We're going to get to it. Now, during this time, the middle class and lower class income, it slowed down pretty sharply because we're going through a recession. But the income for the wealthiest people, the top people at the top, it grew. Why is that? Why would income for one class slow down and income for another class grow during the same hard economic times? Why is that? Do you know? Hold on. Now, the concentration of income at the top levels grew to levels that haven't been seen for over 100 years. I'm talking about levels that haven't been seen since the roaring 20s. The concentration of wealth at the top was growing that fast. Unbelievable. Now, you've heard the term the top 1%. Okay? I know everybody within the sound of my voice has heard this term. Now, the wealth for the top 1% of the people in the United States grew approximately 10% between 1989 and 2016. Whereas shares for the bottom 90% of the people in the country fell about 10%. Why? Why would that happen? This is in our lifetime, between 1989 and 2016. It hasn't been that long. This is within our lifetime. Okay. Listen to this. The middle class income during approximately the same period of time, between 1980 and say 2015, 16, the middle class income grew about 85% since the Second World War. Grew about 85%. How much do you think income for the top 1% of people in this country grew at the same time? Now, mind you, if you're a middle class or even upper middle class or poor, and your income rose 85%, you think you're doing pretty good. 85% growth in your income. Because why? Maybe it's because you got a better education. Maybe it's because you had extra money that you could save and you got a good return on your savings. Maybe it's because of that. No, it's not because of that. Now, how much do you think the wealth for the top 1% grew during that same time where you're hooping and hollering thinking that 85% growth for me is great? Well, the growth for the top 1% during that same period of time grew 226%. Now, wealth in this country, I think, measured somehow, maybe the Gini index measures income in this country, but I think estimates are that all of the wealth in the United States is measured at approximately $54 trillion. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of cash. That's a lot of moolah. $54 trillion. Yeah. That's a lot of money. Now, a lot of people can't really grasp trillion. How much is a trillion? You can kind of understand 1,000 and we could understand million. Some of us might even be able to understand billion. But let me break it down for you a little bit and give you an idea of what trillion really is. And I'm going to substitute, instead of talking about money, I'm going to substitute money for time. Okay? And we're going to look at seconds. How much or how long is a million seconds? Don't know. A million seconds is approximately 11 days. You know, about 11 days. Is that right? No, it's wrong. 1 million seconds is approximately 31 days. How much is a billion seconds? A billion seconds is approximately 31 years. A trillion. How much is a trillion seconds? A trillion seconds off the clock is approximately 31,000 years. Now that is the difference between a million and a trillion. 31 days, 31,000 days. Now, before I had mentioned the Gini index, now I'm sure that almost nobody understands or even heard of the Gini index. It's spelled Gini. Now, the Gini index measures income distribution across the entire population. And they use an index from 0 to 100%. Now, in 1820, according to the Gini index, the Gini index said that income measured across the entire population was about 50% in this country. But that same Gini index in 2010 said that it was 70%. So the Gini index actually increases about 1.5% every 5 years. So 0 would mean that everybody the income is distributed amongst everybody evenly. Whereas if you go to 100%, that means that the income is distributed not just unevenly, but it's distributed on a scale that most people at the top have all the money. All the money. Now you can go and you can look up this information. It's common knowledge. This is what they tell you. This is what the government tells you, and they back up their numbers with all kinds of data and stuff. This is what they tell you because this is what they want you to think. And in previous videos, you heard me say many times that it is financially to their advantage to keep you poor. Why do they want to keep you poor? Because it's to their advantage. What advantage? The difference between 1 million and 1 trillion. Now, here's reality. What I was just telling you before is what you can probably pick up and learn on yourself. And this is what people actually think. Now, here's reality. Reality is this. The top 1% of the people in the country, the top 1% of the wealthiest people own approximately 40% of all the wealth. That's 40% of all the wealth in the country. That's 40% of $54 trillion. Okay? Now, where is that money? The top 1% own approximately half, that's half, 50%, they own half of all of the stock, all of the bonds, and all of the mutual funds in the country. So that's where their wealth comes from. Their wealth comes from investing. And middle class and poor people, their income or lack thereof comes from not investing. And as I've told you many times on this channel, I'm going to teach you and show you things that you should have been taught in school. Why weren't you taught this in school? I have to go out and learn this for myself. That's why we are poor. That's why each and every one of us is poor. Because we were not taught to think like 1% of the population that owns 50% of all stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. They invest. They got that financial education that led them to skyrocket into what we call wealth. Now, the bottom 50% of the people in the country, they own about half of 1% of all the wealth. Half of 1%. The rich own 50% of everything. Kind of disheartening, isn't it? Now, listen to this. This is why financial education is important. You need to teach your children. You need to teach your children's children, your cousins, your uncles, your aunts. You need to teach them and make sure that everyone understands the value of financial education. And that's why I'm here. Now, there's going to be new types of investments coming down the pike. They're here already. You've heard dabbles about it. But it is possible that it can make you wealthier than you are. And I'm not talking about spiritual wealth. I'm talking about financial wealth. Good, hard cash, buy anything you want and don't care how much it costs kind of wealth. Come back and see me on the Cherokee channel. Just Cherokee Charles. And I'll see you in the next one.